Welcome to the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. I am your host, Larry Leeds. Today we'd like to thank our sponsor, Poddex, for sponsoring this episode. Poddex are unique interview questions and episode starting prompts in the palm of your hand. So whether you're a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, you're going to want to check out poddex.com. Use code Larry21 for 10% off your first order. Today we're diving into the assassination of Alexander Litvinenko. As always, to stay up to date with all of our content, check out our Twitter account, TrueCrimeNS, and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, including the new Good Pods. This show is sponsored by Poddex and Hunt to Killer. For more information about them, you can check them out in the description. It's a pleasure to have you here. And now let's get into today's episode. Alexander Litvinenko was a former officer of the Russian Federal Security Service who escaped prosecution in Russia and received political asylum in the UK. In his books, Blowing Up Russia, Terror from Within, and Lubyanka Criminal Group, Litvinenko described Russian President Vladimir Putin's rise to power as a coup d'etat organized by the FSB. He alleged that a key element of the FSB's strategy was to frighten Russians by bombing apartment buildings in Moscow and other Russian cities. He accused Russian secret services of having arranged the Moscow theater hostage crisis through their Chechen agent and having organized the 1999 Armenian parliament shooting. He also claimed that terrorist Ayman al-Zawahiri was under FSB control when he visited Russia in 1997. Upon his arrival in London, he continued to support the Russian oligarch in exile Boris Berezovsky in his media campaign against the Russian government. Just 2 weeks before his death, Litvinenko accused Putin of ordering the assassination of Anna, apologize for saying her name wrong, Polkivskaya. Russians with their hard names to pronounce. On November 1st, 2006, Lubyanka suddenly fell ill. Earlier that day, he had met Andrei Lugovoy and Dmitry Kovaton. Lugovoy is a former bodyguard of Russian ex-Prime Minister Yegor Gaidar, also reportedly poisoned in November 2006, and former chief of security for the Russian TV channel ORT. Kovaton is now a businessman. Litvinenko had also lunch at a sushi restaurant on Piccadilly in London with an Italian officer and, quote, nuclear expert Mario Scaramella, to whom he made allegations regarding Romano Prodi's connections with the KGB. Scaramella, attached to the Metrikin Commission investigating KGB penetration of Italian politics, claimed to have informed on the death of Anna P., 48 years old, a journalist who was killed at her Moscow apartment in October 2006. He passed Litvinenko's papers supposedly concerning her fate. On November 20th, it was reported that Scaramella had gone into hiding and feared for his life. For several days after November 1st, Litvinenko experienced severe diarrhea and vomiting. At one point, he could not walk without assistance. As the pain intensified, Litvinenko asked his wife to call an ambulance. For several weeks, Litvinenko's condition worsened as doctors searched for the cause of the illness. Surrounded by friends, Litvinenko became physically weak and spent periods unconscious. A photo was taken of Litvinenko on his deathbed and released to the public. Quote, "I want the world to see what they did to me," Lubyanka said. On November 3rd, 2006, Litvinenko, under the name of Edwin Carter, was admitted for further investigation at Barnet Hospital, London, after being moved from his local hospital in North London to University College Hospital in Central London for intensive care. His blood and urine samples were sent to the UK's Atomic Weapons Establishment for testing. Scientists at AWE tested for radioactive poison using gamma spectroscopy. No discernible gamma rays were initially detected. However, a small gamma ray spike was noticed at an energy of 803 kiloelectron volts, barely visible above the background. The BBC reported that by coincidence, another scientist who had worked on Britain's early atomic bomb program decades before happened to overhear a discussion about the small spike and recognized it as the gamma ray signal from the radioactive decay of polonium-210, which was a critical component of early nuclear bombs. On the evening of November 22nd, shortly before his death, his doctors were informed the poison likely to be polonium-210. Further tests on a larger urine sample using spectroscopy designed to detect alpha particles confirmed the result the following day. Unlike most common radiation sources, polonium-210 emits very little gamma radiation, but large amounts of alpha particles which do not penetrate even a sheet of paper or the epidermis of human skin, and is therefore relatively invisible to common radiation detectors such as Geiger counters. This explained why tests conducted by doctors in Scotland Yard at the hospital with Geiger counters were negative. Both gamma rays and alpha particles are classified as ionizing radiation, which can cause radiation damage. An alpha-emitting substance can cause significant damage only if ingested or inhaled. Acting on living cells like a short-range weapon, hours before his death, Litvinenko was tested for alpha emitters using special equipment. Shortly after his death, the UK's Health Protection Agency said tests had established that Lubyanka had significant amounts of the radionuclide polonium-210 in his body. British and US government officials said the use of polonium-210 as a poison had never been documented before. And it was probably the first time anyone had been tested for the presence of polonium-210 in their body. The poison was in his cup of tea. Those who had contact with him may also have been exposed to radiation. The symptoms seen in him appeared consistent with an administered activity of approximately 2 GBq, which corresponds to about 10 micrograms of 210 polonium. That is 200 times the median lethal dose of around 50 nanograms in the case of ingestion. The studies of the biodistribution of 210 PO using gamma-ray spectrometry in postmortem samples were used to estimate intake at 4.4 GBg. Scotland Yard initially investigated claims that Litvinenko was poisoned with thallium. It was reported that early tests appeared to confirm the presence of the poison. Among the distinctive effects of thallium poisoning are hair loss and damage to peripheral nerves. And a photograph of Litvinenko in hospital released to the media on his behalf indeed showed his hair to have fallen out. Litvinenko attributed his initial survival to his cardiovascular fitness and swift medical treatment. It was later suggested a radioactive isotope of thallium might have been used to poison him. Amit Nathwani, one of Litvinenko's physicians, said his symptoms are slightly odd for thallium poisoning. And the chemical levels of thallium we were able to detect are not the kind of levels you'd see in toxicity. Litvinenko's condition deteriorated, and he was moved into intensive care on November 20th. Hours before his death, 3 unidentified circular-shaped objects were found in his stomach via an X-ray scan. It is thought these objects were almost certainly shadows caused by the presence of Prussian blue, the treatment he had been given for thallium poisoning. Late on November 22nd, Litvinenko's heart failed. The official time of death was 9:21 at University College Hospital in London. The autopsy took place on December 1st. Litvinenko had ingested polonium-210, a poisonous radioactive isotope. Mario Scarmella, who had eaten with Lubyanka, reported that doctors had told him the body had 5 times the lethal dose of polonium-210. Litvinenko's funeral took place on December 7th at the Central London Mosque, after which his body was buried at Highgate Cemetery in North London. In his last statement, he said about Putin, quote, "This may be the time to say 1 or 2 things to the person responsible for my present condition. You may succeed in silencing me, but that silence comes at a price. You have shown yourself to be as barbaric and ruthless as your most hostile critics have claimed. You have shown yourself to have no respect for life, liberty, or any civilized value. You have shown yourself to be unworthy of your office, unworthy of the trust of civilized men and women. You may have succeeded in silencing one man, but the howl of protest from around the world will reverberate, Mr. Putin, in your ears for the rest of your life. May God forgive you for what you have done, not only to me, but to beloved Russia and its people. And that is all we have for this episode of the True Crime Never Sleeps podcast. This show is possible in part to our sponsors, Poddex and Hunt a Killer. Visit poddex.com and use promo code Larry21 to get 10% off your order. Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts about this case. Have you heard of other cases similar to this one? Let us know. Should there be let us know another topic you'd like covered in regards to assassinations, and we might be able to feature it in a future episode. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search True Crime Never Sleeps. And as always, if you want to support the show, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/TCNS. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll see you next time.